Welcome back in. Appreciate all of you hanging out with us as we roll through the Monday edition of the program. Obviously, we have spent a lot of time talking about the game, but I also wanted to tell you that clearly a pretty big move, I would say, in the grand scheme of things with Sam Darnold being traded to Carolina. What do we think about that? What's the significance? What's the likelihood that he's going to be successful? We are rolling through the program, and we spent a lot of time talking about the NCAA tournament. I want to reiterate, I know that VCU did not end up being able to play against Oregon in the first round of the tournament, but overall, pretty incredible, I thought, success story for the NCAA tournament. We crowned a champion. We played every game in the tournament except for that one in the first round, and we ended up with the two best teams throughout the course of the regular season, able to go head-to-head, and everybody could kick back and watch and see for ourselves how they would match up, because their early season matchup ended up getting canceled for, I believe it was COVID-related reasons. So we finally got to see what happened when Baylor took the floor against Gonzaga. So we've obviously been talking about that quite a bit. But I also wanted to make sure that we did not forget to talk about the big story of Sam Darnold being traded from the Jets. And I say big story not in a facetious manner, because, again, I think this is further fallout from Deshaun Watson. And what do I mean by that? Well, I don't think it's a coincidence that the San Francisco 49ers and the Carolina Panthers, who were two different teams that I think would have otherwise been in the Deshaun Watson market. In fact, the Carolina Panthers were talked about a ton as a potential destination for Deshaun Watson. It seemed like Matt Rule was really intrigued by him. And to a large extent, I think the San Francisco 49ers had to have been kicking the tires on Deshaun Watson as well. I think now that we've got 22 some odd Deshaun Watson accusers, I didn't even talk about this on Monday, but the Houston Police Department is officially investigating Deshaun Watson for criminal-related charges, and it's not just Houston either, according to Tony Busby, who is the attorney representing the 22 women in this case. He is scheduled later in the day, Tuesday, today, for there to be a discussion about everything surrounding the Deshaun Watson case. So I would imagine that we will get some form of update from him as to what exactly is going on with Deshaun Watson. And there will probably be stories that we will talk about tomorrow in the context of Deshaun Watson. But the reason why I bring him up is I believe the 49ers basically said, hey, Deshaun Watson's not a viable option. I think the Panthers said the same. And so the Panthers are trying to get some value out of Sam Darnold. They want him, whether or not he can, I do not know, to be their version of Ryan Tannehill, except he's quite a bit younger. And if you're asking, what does that mean? Well, for a long time, if you were a quarterback who was drafted at a high level and then the team let go of you, you were kind of like the island of misfit toys. In other words, people basically decided that you didn't make sense anywhere in the NFL. And there were almost no reclamation projects that ended up working anywhere in the NFL. In fact, if you were going to find a stud quarterback, you pretty much had to go into the NFL draft, or occasionally you might get super lucky with a guy way down the bench. I'm talking a Kurt Warner type situation, but even those almost never occurred. And so, as you break this down, it seems clear to me that Matt Rule, with Joe Brady, who has been a quarterback whisperer, you remember what he was able to do with Joe Burrow, it seems clear to me that their overall goal here, pretty straightforward, is to figure out if Sam Darnold is redeemable. And certainly there are a lot of issues with Adam Gase and the overall incompetence of the New York Jets franchise that would lead you to believe that Sam Darnold has the kind of talent that if you paired him with Christian McCaffrey, who is probably the best single running back in the NFL in terms of total variety, Derrick Henry stands out there. I'm not saying that he's better than Derrick Henry at running back, But when you look at his ability out of the backfield and all of the other plays that he can make and just the dynamicism of his talent, I would like to think if I am Sam Darnold, given that they have some good young talent at the wide receiver position too, that this is in some way a redeemable talent. And if they are able to find a way to make him work for them, then they could believe that they've got their own version of Ryan Tannehill. And if it doesn't work out, then Matt Rule is still a very young coach in his tenure with the Carolina Panthers, and they can go back into the draft, or maybe they wait a year and see if Deshaun Watson is still available, depending on how exactly his legal issues resolve themselves in the months and maybe even the year ahead, because I really do believe it's going to be unlikely that there's going to be any sort of resolution of this Deshaun Watson mess anytime in the near future. So it is a low risk, just a second and a third round pick in 22, one more pick. I think it's a fourth rounder. Dub, you can look that up to be sure that I've got that right. Relatively low cost, given the potential outcome there in a very positive way. And it seems like Matt Rule believes that Sam Darnold could in some way find redemption with the Carolina Panthers. Certainly, I know that Sam Darnold's got to be super excited just to be out of the New York Jets mess. Now, larger context, what does this mean for the Jets? It's pretty clear. I mean, we've been saying this for a while. It is very likely, I believe, that Zach Wilson is going to go number 2 overall to the Jets. We know Trevor Lawrence is going number 1 overall to the Jags. The question now, quarterbacks 1-2, Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, who are the San Francisco 49ers going to take with the third pick? And by the way, I have adjusted my opinion on what I think the Atlanta Falcons are going to do with the fourth pick. I think it's very likely that the Atlanta Falcons are going to draft now based on just kind of looking around and having some conversations. I think that they are going to draft Kyle Pitts, the tight end out of Florida. I think Arthur Smith is going to decide, you know what, I can go with Matt Ryan for another 2 or 3 years. He is a guy that has a lot of talent, obviously, over the years. Arthur Smith's going to be fine with riding with him for another 2 to 3 years. And I think Kyle Pitts is going to be the first non-quarterback to come off the board in the NFL draft. I think the Falcons are going to take him at 4 overall. Okay. That conversation will be interesting to follow, and certainly we'll be breaking it down for you in the days and the weeks and the months ahead. But that is the latest from my perspective on the decision with Sam Darnold. When we come back, top of hour 2, we had a big moment, an exciting moment, a thrilling moment for all of you out there that are ready for sports to get back to normal. The Texas Rangers had a full stadium for the first time, a stadium or arena in pro sports since March, over a year, was completely and totally full, and it looked like people had an incredibly fantastic time. We will talk about that. I'll also talk with you about the hypocrisy of Major League Baseball and their decision to move the All-Star game a bit more, and we will talk about the Masters and how it ties in with that All-Star game decision. I appreciate all of you hanging out with us. This is the Tuesday edition of OutKick on Fox Sports Radio.